The transmission is live. The fog over the Thames is thicker than usual tonight, but it's not the weather. It's the smoke from a fire the banking cartel can no longer contain. You were told London was the bedrock of the global financial system. You were told the vaults of the LBMA were overflowing with the physical truth. They lied. While the mainstream media spent all of 2025 telling you to buy tech stocks and trust the digital ledger, a liquidity tsunami was quietly draining the lifeblood out of the City of London. Welcome to the red zone. Welcome to Chapter 1, the London Mirage. As of the first week of January 2026, the London Bullion Market Association is facing a terminal reality check. For over a century, the London Good Delivery Bar was the ultimate standard of wealth. But today, those 1,000-ounce bars are becoming ghost bars. The official reports will tell you there are thousands of tons of silver sitting in those subterranean vaults, but they aren't telling you who actually owns it. Most of that metal is already spoken for. It belongs to ETFs, it belongs to central banks, or it's tied up in complex leasing schemes that allow the cartel to pretend the same bar is in 10 different places at once. When you strip away the paper lies and look at the free float, the actual silver available for someone to walk in and buy, the number isn't just low, it is effectively zero. Think about the narrative math of this betrayal. Imagine a massive high-security warehouse. On the outside, the ledger says there are 1 million crates of food inside. But when you open the doors, you realize that 999,000 of those crates have already been sold to people who aren't in the room. Only 1 crate is left on the floor, and there are 10,000 hungry people standing at the gates. That is London in 2026. For every single ounce of silver that is truly liquid and available for sale in the London market, there are thousands of digital contracts claiming ownership. This is the behavioral sink in its final stage. We saw the first signs of this liquidity tsunami when silver touched $82 an ounce just days ago. The moment the price broke the psychological barrier of the old world, the frantic phone calls started, not from retail investors, but from the industrial giants, the companies that need obtainium to build the AI servers and solar arrays of 2026. They realized that the paper lies they were holding in their portfolios couldn't be soldered onto a circuit board. They demanded delivery, and London couldn't answer the call. We are seeing historical parallels that should make your blood run cold. Look back to the Panic of 1873, when the sudden realization that there wasn't enough physical metal to back the soaring debts of the railroad boom caused the entire Western world to grind to a halt. The banks closed their doors, the paper lies of the era were incinerated, and those who didn't hold the physical metal were left with nothing but decorative wallpaper. In 2026, the railroads are the AI data centers and the electric grids, but the physical truth remains the same. You cannot run an empire on empty vaults. The cartel is currently operating a ghost exchange. They are moving numbers around on screens, desperate to keep the paper price from reflecting the total absence of physical metal. They are using the paper guillotine to punish anyone who tries to go long, raising margins to levels that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. But you can't margin call a shortage. You can't use an algorithm to fill an empty vault. While the London Mirage flickers and fades, the physical truth is migrating. It's fleeing the red zone of the West and seeking shelter in the East. Every day that the LBMA pretends its vaults are full is a day that the liquidity tsunami grows larger. The water is receding from the shore and the banking cartel is standing on the beach, telling you the ocean has never been calmer. But we know the physical truth. We know that the London Mirage is the last line of defense for a system that has run out of time and out of metal. The vaults aren't just low. They are culturally, strategically, and physically empty. And the scavenger protocol we are about to witness is the final proof that the masters of the universe have finally run out of obtainium. The physical truth is making a mockery of the suits in Canary Wharf. When the supply chain snaps and the red zone expands, the hierarchy of the financial world doesn't just bend, it flips upside down. Welcome to Chapter 2, the scavenger protocol. For a century, the high-level bullion banks looked down on the retail market. To them, the coins in your safe, the sovereigns, the eagles, the maples, were just toys for the paranoid. The real business happened in the wholesale market, where massive 1,000-ounce bars were swapped between institutional giants. But in January 2026, the wholesale market is a graveyard. The 1,000-ounce bars have either been sucked into the Shanghai fortress or locked behind the steel doors of ETFs that cannot sell. This has triggered what I call the scavenger protocol. The banking elite, the very people who once manipulated the price to shake you out of your position, are now coming to you with their hats in their hands. They aren't looking for massive industrial shipments anymore. They are scavenging for the common man's metal. Let's look at the narrative math of this desperation. Think of the silver market as a vast ocean. The wholesale market represents the deep blue water where the massive ships sail. The retail market The local coin shops, the online dealers, the private stacks is the shoreline. For decades, the tide was high, but today the ocean has dried up. The massive ships are grounded on the seabed. To keep the engines running, the captains are now sending small rowboats to the shore, begging the locals for every cup of water they can find. We are seeing reports of major bullion banks quietly offering massive premiums, sometimes 20 or 30% above the paper price, just to buy back retail inventory from local dealers in the UK and North America. They are trying to melt down your 1-ounce rounds and 10-ounce bars just to create enough physical truth to satisfy a single industrial delivery contract. This is the ultimate behavioral sink. The predators have become the scavengers. We saw a similar inversion during the dark days of 1933. Back then, the government used Executive Order 6102 to force the people to hand over their gold because the banks were empty and the system was failing. They called it a patriotic duty. But the physical truth was that the state was bankrupt and needed the people's obtainium to survive. In 2026, they aren't using executive orders yet. They are using cold, hard desperation. They are trying to lure your silver back into the system with high buyback prices because their own vaults are nothing but echoes and paper lies. The liquidity tsunami has shifted. It's no longer flowing from the mines to the banks. It's trying to flow from the people back to the cartel. But the behavioral sink has a mind of its own. The more the banks scramble for retail silver, the more the public realizes that the paper price is a fraud. When you see a billion-dollar bank trying to buy a box of silver coins from a shop in a London suburb, you know the paper guillotine is about to fall. The red zone is now inside the retail shop. Dealers are reporting that for every one person selling their silver back to the banks, 50 more are standing in line to buy what's left. The obtainium is vanishing from the shelves as fast as the banks can try to source it. We are witnessing the death of the spot price as a meaningful metric. If the bank has to pay a 30% premium to get metal from a retail dealer, then the spot price isn't $75, it's $100. The scavenger protocol is the final admission of defeat. It is the moment the banking cartel admits that their digital ledger is broken and that the physical truth, held by the people, is the only thing that can save them. But the people are no longer selling. They've seen the supply chain snap, they've seen the Shanghai fortress, and they know that in a world of paper lies, the one who holds the silver holds the future. The intelligence is undeniable. The life support for the Western financial system has just been unplugged by the East. While the LBMA and COMEX were busy printing paper lies, the dragon was quietly building a wall made of the physical truth. Welcome to Chapter 3, The Dragon's Chokehold. For over a century, the flow of silver was predictable. It was mined in the Americas and refined in the East, only to be shipped back to the vaults of London and New York to back the digital promises of the banking cartel. But on January 1st, 2026, the music stopped. Beijing has officially implemented its new ironclad export licensing regime. This isn't just a regulatory hurdle, it is a physical blockade. They haven't just limited the supply, they have effectively nationalized every gram of obtainium within their borders. To understand the scale of this supply chain snap, you have to look at the narrative math. China currently controls roughly 70% of the global silver refining capacity. Imagine the global electronics industry as a massive machine that requires 10 gallons of specialized oil every hour just to keep from overheating. For decades, China has been providing 7 of those 10 gallons. Now, overnight, they have announced that those 7 gallons are no longer for sale to the outside world. The machine is still running, the demand is still there, but 70% of the fuel has just vanished from the market. This is the red zone in its purest form. The historical parallel here is haunting. Look back to the Silver Purchase Act of 1934. Back then, the United States used its massive treasury to artificially drive up the price of silver, effectively draining the metal out of China, which was still on a silver standard. It caused a total economic collapse in the East, forcing China into a behavioral sink of hyperinflation and social chaos. In 2026, the script has been flipped with surgical precision. Today, it is China that is using its dominance to drain the West of its industrial lifeblood. They are the ones holding the physical truth, and they are using it to throw the Western paper markets into the jaws of a Great Depression. The impact on the LBMA is terminal. For years, the London market relied on a steady stream of refined silver from Chinese smelters to replenish its bleeding inventories. That stream is now a desert. Reports from the Shanghai Gold Exchange show that the physical premium, the real price, has hit a 12% spread over the paper price in London. If you want the metal in 2026, you pay the China price. If you refuse, you get nothing but a paper lie that you can't build a semiconductor with. Beijing's new doctrine is clear: profitability over volume. They are no longer willing to cannibalize their own resources to provide cheap obtainium for Western tech giants. They have realized that in the age of AI-driven data centers and the global solar transition, silver is the ultimate strategic weapon. By choking the export routes, they aren't just raising the price, they are choosing who gets to have a 2026 economy and who is left in the dark. The banking cartel is in a blind panic. They are trying to use the paper guillotine to suppress the price, hiking margins by 30% in a single week to scare away the longs. But you cannot use a margin hike to create more refined silver. The liquidity tsunami of demand from the solar and EV sectors is hitting a wall, and that wall is made in China. The dragon's chokehold is the final proof that the era of Western financial dominance, built on the ability to print paper lies and command physical resources, is over. The East has the metal, the West has the receipts. And as the vaults in London continue to bleed out, the world is realizing that a receipt is a very poor substitute for the physical truth. The signal is flickering, but the data is screaming. If you're still checking the price of silver on a mainstream financial app, you're not looking at a market. You're looking at a crime scene. Welcome to Chapter 4, the 378.1 disconnect. While the world was distracted by the headline wars of late 2025, the banking cartel was busy building the largest paper lie in human history. To understand why London is empty and why the scavenger protocol is in effect, you have to look at the narrative math of the betrayal. Imagine a single heavy bar of physical silver sitting in a dark vault in London. In a world of physical truth, that bar represents one owner. But in the twisted ledger of the COMEX and the LBMA, that same bar has been sold, leased, and promised away over 378 times. Think about that. For every one single ounce of obtainium that actually exists in the free float of the Western vaults, there are 378 digital receipts, paper contracts, and ETF shares floating in the behavioral sink. If every person holding a silver contract suddenly stood up and demanded their metal, the first person in line would get the bar. The other 377 people would be left holding a digital ghost. This is the paper guillotine in mid-fall. The cartel has managed to suppress the price for decades by dumping these paper lies onto the market every time the physical truth tried to break out. But the 2026 supply chain snap has made their digital games irrelevant. When China closed its borders and Peru's production vanished, the industrial giants stopped playing the paper game. They don't want a credit on a screen. They want the silver to keep their factories from going dark. The liquidity tsunami has finally reached the doorstep of the exchanges. We are seeing reports of force majeure events hidden in the fine print of delivery contracts. The banks are no longer offering you the metal. They are trying to pay you off in failing fiat currency at the screen price of $75, while the real price in Tokyo and Shanghai has already surged past 130. The historical parallel is impossible to ignore. Look back to 1933, when the U.S. government realized that their paper lies were being exposed by the physical demand for gold. They didn't fix the system. They legalized the theft. They issued Executive Order 6102, criminalizing the possession of the physical truth and forcing the people to accept paper for their metal. Then, they immediately devalued that paper. In 2026, the paper guillotine is performing the same surgery. The banks are trying to ring-fence the remaining silver for their state-sanctioned industrial partners, while the retail investor is liquidated. They are moving the goalposts in real time, hiking margins on silver contracts to 100% in a desperate attempt to force you out of the red zone before the reset. The 378.1 disconnect is the terminal fracture of the global market. It is the moment where the spot price becomes a work of fiction and the physical truth becomes the only reality that matters. As London's vaults go from low to empty, the ratio isn't just a number, it's a timer. Every day you wait to secure obtainium is a day you are betting that you will be that one person out of 378 who actually gets to the vault door before it's welded shut. The paper lies are being shredded by the reality of a world that cannot run on receipts. The blade is dropping, the behavioral sink is full, and the only question left is, do you have the metal, or do you have a promise from a ghost? We have reached the end of the map. Beyond this point, the paper lies vanish entirely, and only the physical truth remains to light the way. Welcome to the final briefing. Welcome to Chapter 5, the survival briefing. The banking cartel wants you to believe that the current chaos is a temporary glitch in the system. They are using their media megaphones to suggest that once the tensions in the Caribbean settle and the London vaults are replenished, we will return to the old normal. They are lying. We have entered the terminal deficit, a state from which the current financial architecture cannot recover. Let's look at the raw intelligence for January 2026. The London Empty event hasn't just removed silver from the city, it has acted as a catalyst for a global supply chain snap. When you combine the LBMA's hollowed out vaults with the Shanghai Fortress, locking down 70% of global refining capacity, you are looking at a quarter of the world's annual silver production simply vanishing into a black hole of state control. This isn't just a shortage, it's an extinction event for industrial obtainium. In the behavioral sink, we see the true nature of the banking cartel's desperation. As silver spiked to an all-time high of $84 an ounce just days ago, the CME Group and the LBMA didn't just raise margins, they effectively declared war on the common man. They increased the cost of doing business by 30% in a single week, a move designed to trigger a liquidity tsunami in reverse, sucking the oxygen out of the room to force the price back down. But notice the physical truth. While the paper price cools under the weight of margin hikes, the physical premiums in India and China are screaming. The spread is no longer a gap, it's a canyon. Why is the cartel so terrified? Because silver is the conductive core of the 2026 reality. You cannot run the AI data centers that are currently replacing the workforce without silver. You cannot build the drone swarms currently patrolling the red zone in the South Pacific without silver. The narrative math is undeniable. For the first time in history, industrial demand has completely decoupled from the banking cartel's ability to manipulate it. The silver is gone. It is buried in circuit boards and solar panels. It is not coming back to the vaults. We are entering the terminal phase. As the paper guillotine drops on the COMEX, we will see a force majeure event, unlike anything since the fall of Rome. The banks will simply stop settling in metal. They will offer you their failing digital currency as a consolation prize, while they keep whatever physical scraps are left for themselves and their state masters. The insider profit protocol for 2026 is simple. First, recognize the physical truth. If you cannot touch it, you do not own it. Any silver held in a pool account or a digital certificate is nothing more than a paper lie waiting to be erased by a bank holiday. Second, secure your obtainium before the grid goes permanently dark. We are seeing the birth of a two-tier market. There is the official price they tell you on the news, and then there's the real price you pay at the local coin shop. The gap between those two numbers is the price of your survival. Finally, prepare for the liquidity tsunami to wash away the last remnants of the old world. As gold targets $5,000 and silver prepares to enter the triple digits, the behavioral sink will swallow those who waited for a better entry point. The empty vaults of London were the signal. The scavenger protocol was the proof. The dragon's chokehold is the end. We are moving into a world where the only thing that matters is the weight of the metal in your hand and the courage in your blood. The grid is flickering, the supply chain snap is complete, and the insider profit is signing off. The physical truth is yours now. Don't let them take it back.